I don't know how to start this, so I'm just gonna talk. Hey, it's been a while since my last video. Oh my god, it's been 2 years. And I can hear what you're thinking. Bob, what has brought you out of YouTube retirement? Well, it's stupidity. Again. I listen to a podcast called The Giant Bombcast, which features folks talking about video games and whatnot. A few months ago, I found myself reading the comments for a particular episode on Reddit. Normally, I'd show those comments on screen right now, but it seems they've been deleted for reasons that will become clear later. I remember one commenter was confused about why this particular episode of the Bombcast was disliked so much on YouTube, to which someone else replied, "Yeah, there's this dude named The Quartering who did an expose on one of the guests of the show, Callie Plaguey, so that's why it's disliked so much." I went searching for this expose out of curiosity, and what I found landed me in a cognitive coma of which I am just now coming out. For UC viewers, I stumbled across a stupidity singularity hosted on youtube.com that is so badly reasoned, so clearly manipulative, and so insanely hypocritical that my brain done gone gave up for a while. So grab a drink, relax, and let's jump headfirst into the mental quicksand that is Gamespot Caught! Tanking review for Days Gone. The video we're about to cover is all about GameSpot's Callie Plaguey and her review of Days Gone, a post-apocalyptic third-person zombie action exclusive for the PlayStation 4. You can pause this video right now to read her review before we go any further. A link to it is in the description. But we'll be covering the gist of it, so it's not required reading or anything. So right off the bat, when you look at this video's thumbnail, you know what you're getting yourself into. Fake gamer flees after wait, it's in all caps. Fake gamer flees after being caught! There's a certain type of YouTube video that trades on the rage of a specific subset of quote-unquote gamers, and this is a prime example. You've got the fake gamer dog whistle, you got the pic of the sexy lady you can get mad at because she's too goddamn sexy, you got not one red word, but 2 red words. Mwah, it's perfect. Just like mom used to make. That bitch. Most of this video is actually The Quartering just reciting Callie's review. There's surprisingly little meat to it, and the meat that's there is, well, we'll get to it. The interesting thing is that a lot of The Quartering's reaction to Callie's review is neutral to positive. He actually says what she's saying is fair numerous times.
You know, the story is a fair critique. Seems like a really, really nitpicky thing, but hey, whatever, a fair critique. Hunting exists just to be there. Okay, fair. I think a fair critique, very fair critique.
Huh. It's almost like there's nothing wrong with Callie's review. Weird. Okay, goodbye. No, wait. Her review is very wrong, actually, because she gave it the wrong score.
It's rare when I read a horrible game review. GameSpot gave the game a 5, which to me seemed low. I would have thought maybe a 7 is more reasonable. A 5 is like borderline awful.
Well, to GameSpot, a 5 is mediocre. I know this because of the part of the review you're showing on screen that says a 5 is mediocre.
Now, you could say they decided, it's mediocre, and maybe...
No, not maybe. Definitely. That's what they said. It's right there. Look at your own video. All right. Quartering thinks this is
a terrible video game review.
But why exactly does he think it's so bad?
It sounds like this writer has a problem with a gruff white male protagonist.
Wait, why would you think that?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Oh, and if you thought I used editing magic to make the Quartering look like an idiot.
It sounds like this writer has a problem with a gruff white male protagonist. I'm not sure.
But really, all of Quartering's complaints can be boiled down to opinions of opinions. Except when he's, outright wrong.
Deacon has no real character development, and the game is uncritical of his more dubious actions. So, what does that mean? It's an apocalypse. Deacon does some bad things, but the game doesn't tell you they're bad. Interesting.
If you want to avoid spoilers for Days Gone, go ahead and jump to the timecode on screen. In order to point out just how wrong the Quartering is here, I'm going to have to get into some of Days Gone's plot. So here goes. In Days Gone, protagonist Deacon St. John is in a gang with his pal Boozer called the Mongrels Motorcycle Club, or MC for short, way before the zombie apocalypse happens. In the MC, members would get tattoos as a way of showing their affiliation and rank.
You guys had ranks like road captain and president. I mean, you wore badges and patches and tats like uniforms.
When a member named Jesse Williamson was kicked out of the MC by their leader Jack felt Jesse shouldn't have the tattoo showing his MC affiliation. So Deacon, Boozer, and another club member held Jesse down while Jack burned off Jesse's back tattoo with a blowtorch.
I kept my name. And I kept my memories of how you and Boozer and Jersey Jim held me down. While Jack took a torch to my back.
Jesse, that was a long time ago. We didn't really...
Jesse was tortured nearly to death, and Deacon helped. After the apocalypse, when Deacon thinks his wife Sarah is dead and has made a makeshift memorial for her, he lets us know that he didn't tell her about Jesse.
I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of it. I never told you because I knew that you would never be with someone who could do something like that.
So not only did Deacon torture a man nearly to death before the apocalypse, he kept it from his wife because he knew it was a horrible thing he'd done. And after Jesse is dealt with and Deacon finds out Sarah's alive, this side plot never comes up again. It's just dropped. And it's a big revelation. After the zombie apocalypse, Jesse forms a group called the Rippers, who worship the zombies and torture people by burning them very similarly to the way that Jesse was burned. Rippers are directly responsible for Deacon's pal Boozer losing his arm after they burned it severely, in addition to various other nefarious things, all of which seemingly wouldn't have happened if Deacon and Boozer didn't both torture Jesse. It's something you'd expect the game to be introspective about, but Days Gone simply keeps driving along. So Deacon does dubious things outside of the apocalypse that the game is surprisingly silent on. Callie isn't the first person to point this out either. Quartering saying, "But it's a zombie apocalypse and people do bad things," doesn't apply here. And he makes this uninformed criticism again later in the video.
Deacon is selfish, and it's simply boring that a game is uncritical of him. Well, it's the zombie apocalypse. I'm pretty sure you are only worried about taking care of yourself in that scenario. That is a totally understandable reaction.
I'm beginning to notice that these complaints of Callie's review are oddly surface level. Quartering isn't getting into any specifics regarding Days Gone's plot or characters. Weird. I'm sure it's nothing and it won't come up later in part 4 of this video.
Another con. The Deacon relationship with Sarah is flat and unconvincing. Okay, that's reasonable, but it seems like you're just reviewing the story. Many narrative arcs end abruptly or lack interesting or meaningful conclusions. Okay, another story. So basically, I think I can summarize how this game review was formulated. They didn't like the story. All right.
So Quartering is implying that reviews shouldn't address the stories of games? What? Days Gone is a narrative-driven open-world shooter. That narrative flows through the game in every way. The story not only dictates what you're doing in the game, but why you're doing it. You're rewarded for progressing through it. It's part of promotional materials. To not address the quality of Days Gone's story would mean that you're not reviewing the game as a whole. Is anyone seriously expecting a review of this game where the reviewer plugs their ears and shuts their eyes whenever a cutscene starts? Alright, time to explore that wonderful subtext from earlier, the objectivity argument.
Now, I'm not saying Days Gone is a 10. I'm not even saying it's a 9. I think only a hardcore fan would probably give it an 8 in its current state with the patches and everything. But to give it a 5 seems like there's an artificial reason you're dragging that down. None of these cons seem technical at all.
The Quartering is complaining about review scores being arbitrary when all review scores are arbitrary. There is no such thing as an objective review. Your review can contain objective findings like when a game's not working properly, but you bring all of your life experiences and personal preferences to any media you consume, and those will affect how you react to it.
It's rare when I read a horrible game review, but I do admit that I, in a way, need their existence.
Right, because if the review was entirely objective, you would have absolutely nothing to say about it. Here's an objective review of Days Gone.
Days Gone was released April 26, 2019. Days Gone is for PlayStation 4. Days Gone features a Caucasian male protagonist named Deacon St. John who has hair. Black hair. Other characters have hair as well. Hair.
An objective review of a video game isn't a review, it's a report. A list of things a game features or contains, not a subjective assessment of those things. Because saying video game X runs at 30 frames per second is objectively fact, but saying video game X runs at 30 frames per second and that's bad because it should run at 60 is now subjective. Some people are totally fine with 30 frames per second and wouldn't dock points because of it. If you're looking for an objective review of a game, then you aren't actually looking for a review at all. You're looking for a Wikipedia entry.
Days Gone is not a 5. Maybe a 7 is more reasonable. The game has technical issues. It is, quote, yet another zombie game, and the open world genre is a bit tired. That doesn't mean that people don't enjoy the game, and that doesn't mean that it should affect the specific score of this specific game in this incident.
So, a few things here. Firstly, no one is saying that there aren't any people on the planet who enjoy Days Gone for whatever reason. A review isn't about how you think other people feel about a game. It's about how the reviewer feels about the game. I think with all the review aggregators we have these days like Metacritic and OpenCritic, people have begun to believe that there's a way to make reviews objective by combining a bunch of them into a generalized consensus. Admittedly, this is exacerbated by corporate incentives among some companies for higher scores. But getting a bunch of people together to agree whether something is good or bad doesn't make that thing objectively good or bad. Which makes this argument so crazy, because in arguing for the supposedly objective score of Days Gone, a 7 out of 10, Quartering has highlighted that people have differing views on it by saying, that doesn't mean people don't enjoy the game, and my brain is shutting down again because this is so badly reasoned. Ah! There's a tendency for bad faith actors to want to label any qualitative assessment of media as biased toward one thing or another, which is deceptively true. We all have biases and preferences, but as the general public, we don't have to explain ourselves. A reviewer's job is to explain why they felt the way that they did about a particular piece of media, to make us understand where they're coming from so we can use that information in our purchasing decisions. Their job isn't to make us agree with them. Where things get fucked is when someone says, you just reviewed Days Gone badly because of your SJW agenda.
Radical SJW, keep your politics out of our video games.
So you want a reviewer to stop feeling the way that they feel? You're arguing to have a reviewer at best not do their job, and at worst, lie about how they feel. It goes without saying, but I'll just say it anyway. All reviews are subjective. By pointing out the supposed hidden agenda of some reviewers, people like the Quartering push for any personal preference or beliefs to be taken out of the review, effectively hiding that alleged hidden agenda, which is oddly redundant. Despite hiding behind criticism like, none of these cons seem technical at all, the Quartering's goal in saying things like this is to sanitize reviews with objectivity and erase reviewers like Callie's perspectives, effectively shutting her up. After all, if you don't agree with Callie's perspective, then that means she shouldn't have one. It's not enough to simply disagree with her. But the thing is, a reviewer's perspective doesn't invalidate your perspective. You're free to like and not like whatever you want. You can find reviewers whose tastes line up with yours. Hell, you can even write your own review. Hey, wait. Why didn't the Quartering write his own review of Days Gone? I know that would require more effort than barfing out half-baked stream vlogs multiple times a day, but he actually has very little to say about the game except that Callie's review of it is wrong.
Days Gone, I admit, is not a game that originally appealed to me, but every time I see one of these woke video game reviews, I'm inclined to purchase the game out of spite.
Wait, you didn't buy Days Gone? Then how did... He must have rented it or had a fan donate it or something. Okay, all right. Imagine if Quartering made this whole response video, which is all about how he thinks a review for Days Gone is inaccurate and unfair, if he hadn't actually played Days Gone. That'd be pretty fucking silly. He didn't play the fucking game! I'm losing my mind!
If I wasn't suffering under the crippling weight that is my backlog, I would have purchased it. I could have written these pros and cons without actually playing the game.
You actually did, inadvertently, by qualitatively assessing a review of a game that you didn't play!
Review code was provided by Sony. Alright, well, so you didn't pay for the game.
Neither did you! In fact, you accidentally paid for it, but you returned it!
I'm supposed to believe you played the game. Now, this is why I like Steam, because I know they actually bought the game. Kaylee, allegedly, finished Days Gone's main story in about 55 hours.
The hypocrisy knows no bounds. I honestly didn't think this needed to be said, but here goes. Quartering, you called Callie's review of Days Gone horrible and incorrect. You said she was wrong in giving it a low score and that, in your opinion, Days Gone is a 7 out of 10. But to form an opinion of the quality of the game enough to give it that score, I think it's reasonable to ask that you actually play it first. Instead, you based your "this review is bad" conclusion on the opinions of your peers and guesswork. At the end of the day, you have no idea what you're talking about. It seems as though you just saw the opinions of a woman you didn't like and leapt at the chance to attack her. And that just doesn't seem very objective to me. So we know that Quartering's a massive hypocrite, and I'm feeling lazy right now, so maybe Quartering has said something hypocritical that's along the lines of what I want to say about this con that he's pulling in this video and on his channel. Oh, here we go.
Current games journalists use hate bait to get gamers, to get them hate clicks and make money off of you.
Here's the formula for this video. Take a review of a game journalist you dislike, claim they're not being objective enough, and use this fake criticism to harass them and generate revenue from, as Quartering put it, hate clicks. People like the Quartering use arguments like this as a way to undercut journalists like Callie and make the most silly, dismissive, disrespectful accusation of all.
It's great when we can point out that somebody obviously doesn't care about video games.
Consider this. If you think Callie doesn't care about games, why did she play Days Gone all the way through for her review? You can say it was part of her job, but that doesn't change the fact that she played the game to completion. And hey, we can all agree that if you didn't play the game and pretend to talk about it with any kind of authority, then you are the one who doesn't care about games. That you are the fake gamer. And there's only one person here that fits that description. It's poetic that people like the Quartering accuse others of not being objective and too emotional, when they are the ones who are entirely controlled by their emotions. They see an opinion like, "I don't like this game," from someone whose character they loathe for some reason, and then lose themselves in their anger for that person, and live stream their desperate search for anything that might be misconstrued as an excuse for why they're so angry, to cover up the fact that they have given themselves entirely to that anger. It's an easy trick to pull if you have no conscience and think that logic is for cucks. And this is the strategy, really, whether it's purposeful or not. Be so bad at formulating an argument that the people who disagree with you just quit out of exhaustion. Like, how do you argue with someone about how a review should be more objective? How many times do you have to explain what subjectivity is? Even writing this review was like pulling teeth, because unpacking exactly how and why the Quartering is wrong is a deceptively large task. The guy says something impossibly stupid literally every few seconds.
Journalists.
Anyway, this is probably the tip of the iceberg for this guy. He's got a bunch of other garbage on his channel. Let's check it out. Oh, he's got a channel trailer. Where do I recognize that from? Ah, well.